There is a kind of silence in a woman that does not push a man away. On the contrary, it awakens in him a primal obsession. It is the kind of silence that keeps his mind returning to her, even after he has turned his back and walked away. An absence that does not cool but ignites a fire in his unconscious, the deepest, most instinctual part, where reason cannot intervene. This silence does not stem from anger or manipulation. It is not meant to punish or gain the upper hand. It arises from a steadfast inner core, what Jung called the authentic self, where a woman is no longer swayed by the fear of abandonment. She has transcended the shadows of a wounded ego, embarked on the journey of individuation, and lives with a fullness that comes from within. So, where does the secret of this feminine silence truly lie? Why is a silence so full of presence more addictive than 1,000 invitations? And how can your silence, instead of creating distance, become a magnetic field that makes him unable to stay away? In this video, we will unravel the profound mystery behind the kind of silence that makes a man unable to leave you. Don't miss a single moment, because this is not merely an emotional strategy. You will soon understand why you felt overlooked, not enough, or too much for someone. And more importantly, how to transform that very silence into a source of power that ensures no one will ever take you for granted again. Number 1. The unconscious trap that pushes a man away. There is a type of silence that seems like a pause, but is, in truth, an invisible scream echoing from a panicked soul. It is not the stillness of someone who has found themselves, but the silence of someone sinking, clinging to the fragile hope that if they say nothing more, they will return. But he doesn't. And the more you wait, the more you lose. Why? CarlJung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Most of the decisions we make in love, which we think are rational, actually come from a deeper layer, the unconscious. And in that unconscious, if the fear of abandonment is an unhealed wound, silence will never be a deliberate choice. It is a reaction, a shell into which a woman retreats when she feels her value diminishing in a man's eyes. Imagine a woman in a deep, passionate relationship. When her partner starts to become busier, replying to messages less frequently, she doesn't know what to do except disappear. But this disappearance doesn't come from calm. It is the soul's contraction when triggered by a familiar pain, being ignored, undervalued, forgotten. She waits. But each passing hour, instead of making him feel her absence, renders her invisible. The problem lies not in the act of silence, but in the energy beneath it. A silence filled with fear is not a magnetic field, but a toxic current. Men don't hear the cry for help. They only sense an invisible pressure, as if someone is silently clinging to their shoulders, pulling them down, demanding, manipulating. Though no one speaks, their instincts understand clearly. If I don't come back, she'll collapse. And that doesn't make them feel valued. It makes them exhausted. Picture yourself in a sealed room. The air defense mechanism. And defense mechanisms don't build connections. They build walls. The real pain here isn't that he leaves. It's that you've lost yourself trying to hold on to a fracturing connection. And while you silently wait for him to return, you also gradually lose connection with your being. If what I'm saying touches a familiar pain within you as you hear this, don't look away. Stories like these are why we created this channel, to shine a light on the unconscious parts driving your emotional life without your awareness. Hit the like button to affirm to the universe that you're ready to see the truth, and subscribe to this channel to continue this journey of healing, not through fighting, but through awakening. Remember, Jung never said, "Fix others." He always emphasized, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. So ask yourself, where does my silence come from? If the answer is, because I'm scared, I don't want to be left behind, I don't know what else to do, then you're not being silent. You're paralyzed. And men are not drawn to the vibrations emitted by that paralysis. Silence can indeed be a powerful act, but only when it comes from a mind that has learned to accept all possibilities. If you're silent while inwardly pleading, "Please see my worth," that silence is a plea dressed in pride. But if you're silent and know, whether he stays or leaves, I am here, whole in my world, that is the silence a man cannot bear, because it is not an absence, but a challenge to his ego. You see it now. Not all silences are created equal, and in love, the emotion beneath the silence is the strongest message you send, even without speaking a word. Number 2, silence from within, the spiritual act of the individualized woman. If fearful silence is a stifled cry, then silence from within is the deep breath of a woman who has returned to her soul. It is not a silence born of exhaustion, but a space born of abundance. Not because she has nothing left to say, but because she doesn't need to speak to be felt. This is the silence CarlJung alluded to when he said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." True stillness is not emptiness. It is the most powerful voice of a self that is whole. And that is what makes a man unable to forget you. Not because he hears your call, but because he feels your echo in his mind. Such a woman doesn't stay silent to make him return. She stays silent to return to herself. This silence is not a tactic, but a ritual. Not a tool, but a spiritual state. Like a flower that doesn't need to beckon bees, yet draws the entire garden to its intoxicating fragrance. You can recognize this woman in her eyes. She doesn't probe or expect. Her gaze is deep, like an ancient lake, where you see yourself reflected but cannot stir its depths. She doesn't ask, "Will you call?" or "Do you still think of me?" Because in her world, those answers don't define her worth. From a psychoanalytic perspective, this state marks a woman who has moved beyond identification with her shadow. Jung believed the individuation process begins when we confront and integrate the rejected parts of ourselves. In love, women often unconsciously hand their center to a man, and when he withdraws, they feel empty. But when she begins to reclaim that center through meditation, art, or full presence with herself, silence ceases to be a void. It becomes a sacred space for her to grow. One of the most powerful metaphors for this inner silence lies in Scripture, the image of the Virgin Mary at the foot of the cross. Amid excruciating pain, as her son, the symbol of life, love, and hope, was crucified, Mary did not scream, cling, or resist. She was silent, A silence not born of paralysis but of a profound acceptance of what cannot be changed, and a faith that needs no confirmation. From an analytical psychology perspective, this is not merely a religious act. It is a symbol of mature femininity, a woman who has transcended instinctual emotions to touch inner wholeness. In this state, silence is no longer inaction. It becomes an inner ritual, an act of a self that holds itself up. Mary did not call down God the Father to change her son's fate. She did not panic at the loss of control. Instead, she stood there, fully present in her pain, her clarity, her love without grasping. And that complete presence is what made the Romans, the disciples, and centuries later, humanity bow before her image. CarlJung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And the woman who embodies silence from within has touched that truth. She accepts all her emotions, pain, longing, loneliness, and no longer needs anyone to save them. In this state, her energy becomes primal and irresistible. Modern psychology calls this emotional self-regulation, the ability to soothe oneself without external sources. This is a hallmark of profound emotional maturity and is profoundly attractive to men. Not because it poses a challenge, but because it evokes something deeper, a sense of safety. For no matter how strong a man is, he is a child at heart, and that child is always drawn to the woman who makes him feel there is a place to return to. Ego with the stillness of a mature soul. Wounded silence often stems from feelings of rejection, hurt, or abandonment, yet an inability or unwillingness to engage in dialogue. Instead of speaking, a woman lets her messages be seen and responds with cold silence, posts cryptic quotes on social media, withdraws from conversation without explanation, or deliberately creates distance just to make the other person worry and take initiative. All these behaviors carry a compressed energy of expectation, disappointment, and unnamed anger. This is the unconscious trap, as Jung pointed out, where The shadow acts without our awareness. You think you're keeping distance to be respected, but in reality, you're quietly punishing the other person with your unintegrated wounds. Imagine a guitar strung too tightly. Wounded silence is that inner tension, not producing sound, but emitting a vibration that makes those nearby feel stifled. Men perceive it as an attack cloaked in silence, and their instinct for self-preservation kicks in. Instead of coming closer to soothe, they pull back to avoid being engulfed by an unnamed emotional storm. In contrast, addictive silence is a soft space, like stepping into a cathedral. Quiet, profound, without threat. It's not distance to teach someone a lesson, but a space for you to breathe, to return, to be reborn. And in that space, a man begins to feel an indescribable absence. Not an absence that breeds fear, but one that sparks imagination. As Jung said, man needs difficulties, they are necessary for health. A man needs that distance to reconstruct an idealized image of you in his mind. From a psychoanalytic perspective, the difference lies in the underlying intention of the behavior. Jung emphasized that every act carries symbolic meaning. If your silence symbolizes unacknowledged anger, it creates resistance. If it symbolizes a return to yourself, it generates attraction. We often think love is measured by words, attention, or presence, but sometimes it's measured most accurately by how you withdraw. Not withdrawing to retaliate, but to preserve yourself. And in that perfectly tuned withdrawal, your presence becomes exponentially more powerful because it's no longer tied to unstable emotions, but anchored in a self standing firmly on the ground of its soul. If you've unconsciously practiced these forms of silence or are unsure which kind you're embodying, share in the comments so we and others watching this video can offer clarity. Rest assured, no one is alone in this journey of awakening, though each walks it with different steps. One way to distinguish the two silences is to ask, if he never comes back, will I still feel at peace with this choice? If the answer is no, you're using silence as a gamble. But if the answer is yes, you're embodying silence like a priestess in her sacred temple, needing no one to enter to validate her worth. Jung wrote, "Only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life." And this is the strangest paradox of silence. When you stop using it to be noticed, you become impossible to forget. Now you understand. Not all silences are expressions of strength. Not all absences inspire longing. But there is a kind of silence, born from a self reconciled with its shadow, that will always make a man unable to look away, because it's not a distance between two people, but a distance between him and the unhealed parts of himself. Number 4. The art of creating space. Having understood the two faces of silence, we move to a deeper core, the art of creating space. Not to make someone realize something, nor to make them chase you, but to return to your original self, the authentic whole part of you, unconditioned by the fear of loss or the craving to be loved. CarlJung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." The space you create in a relationship, if done rightly, is a mirror reflecting your heart. A necessary pause to hear the inner voice drowned out by the noise of expectations and wounds. Creating space is not the no-contact strategy. It's not about locking your phone, deleting numbers, or vanishing from social media to get attention. If those actions stem from anger, pain, or hope for a reaction, they remain a subtler form of manipulation, but manipulation nonetheless. True space is a conscious and soulful act. Like planting a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up daily to check if it's sprouted. You create space, step back, and trust the natural process. This is the spirit of a woman who knows how to make room for her growth. From Jung's perspective, creating space is how you withdraw the energy you've projected onto others. When you stop placing your expectations, meaning, and emotions on a man, you begin to have room to see yourself more clearly. What's real? What's illusion? What's an unhealed need? In Jungian psychology, projection is inevitable. We always project unaccepted parts of ourselves onto others, especially in love. But individuation begins when we reclaim. It's a space, an empty cup, embodying receptive energy. Jung analyzed the Grail as a symbol of divine femininity, not grasping, not forcing, but in its conscious openness, it holds what is valuable. Creating space from freedom doesn't start with cutting contact, but with redirecting your gaze from the other back to yourself. The first step is to stop reacting. Don't rush to respond. Don't post something just to be seen. Don't act from the mindset of, I must do something to keep this connection alive. The moment you realize you're acting out of fear of being forgotten, pause. Not to be silent, but to observe that urge. What part of you isn't being heard? Instead of reaching for your phone, reach for a blank page and a pen. You begin to change your relationship with yourself. Write not about him, but about the emptiness you feel without him, and what you fear will come if that emptiness persists. This isn't writing to lament, but a practice of recognizing projected energy. What emotional responsibility are you giving him that should be yours? When you're done, don't reread it. Fold the paper as a small ritual. I see myself, and I reclaim my energy. Then stand up and choose an action that brings you back to your real life. Walk alone without your phone, cook slowly, draw even if you don't know how, tidy your space with instrumental music. These seemingly small acts aren't to fill the void, but to allow the void to exist without frightening you. That's the space born of freedom, where you stand in your life as its master, no longer a gatekeeper waiting for someone to return. And if the urge to reach out persists, to call, text, or check social media, don't suppress it. Redirect the behavior, not the emotion. Instead of picking up the phone, pick up a paintbrush. Instead of writing to him, write to the part of you that feels empty. As you repeat this, you rewire your neural map. Instead of reacting to keep someone, you act to keep yourself. These aren't habits to seem busy. They are self-rituals, repeated not to kill time, but to transform the void into a sacred place where you rediscover your true voice, undistorted by others' reactions. And when the void is no longer an absence to be filled but a fertile ground for your growth, something subtle happens. You no longer need anyone to remember you, yet you become the most unforgettable. And perhaps that's when you reach a new state, where you no longer need to do anything to be loved. Like a wild meadow blooming in season, without advertising or predicting, it simply blooms, because it is itself. A woman who returns to that state needs no strategies. Her presence is an irresistible invitation, not beckoning, yet no one wants to leave, not promising, yet others stay. Number 5. The woman who captivates because she is herself. The woman who leaves an indelible mark on a man's mind is not the most beautiful or the most skilled at psychological games. She captivates simply because she does not try to captivate. She doesn't manipulate, set traps, or amplify her presence as a ploy. She doesn't need to be mysterious by the book. The authenticity in her every moment is a mystery that cannot be imitated. CarlJung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And in the state of becoming her truest self, a woman steps into a form of allure that cannot be measured, for it comes not from appearance, but from frequency. This frequency radiates from a soul that has stopped striving for acceptance, that has ceased adjusting itself to fit the insecurities of others. A therapist once described this archetype as a self-generated gravitational field, a kind of energy a woman doesn't need to create, only to stop trading herself to be chosen. This allure doesn't lie in her reticence, coldness, or unpredictability, but in the substance of her inner world, a vibrant independence, a quiet fullness, a charm that needs no display. And it is at this moment that a man, accustomed to conquering or evading, encounters something unfamiliar, a desire to be near her, yet an inability to control her. Picture a primal forest. It doesn't beckon anyone to enter. It doesn't flash signals or hang banners. It simply exists, deep, mysterious, natural. Yet, it awakens a primal urge in others to explore, to understand, to step inside without destroying. A woman who lives true to herself is like this. She is her ecosystem, where every expression, every action, every silence follows its rhythm, untouchable by manipulation. From a psychological perspective, this is the shift from identifying with the shadow to integrating the authentic self, the core of the individuation process Jung described. The woman of before was a conditioned ego, acting from fear, playing roles to be accepted. The new woman no longer performs. She removes the mask, and in doing so, creates a magnetic field that a man, if awake enough, cannot walk away from. But beware, this doesn't work if you try to pretend to be yourself as a strategy. Validated her worth. And when a woman chooses herself, everything else, including love, becomes a bonus, not a condition for survival. This is the paradox. When you live to be loved, love flees. But when you live to become yourself, the right kind of love finds you like an irresistible reflex. Number 6, the final test. And then, like a law of energy, like the inevitable result of a purposeful withdrawal, he returns. It might be a simple text. How have you been? It could be an emoji, a hesitant call, or a genuine attempt to reconnect. But whatever the form, that moment always arrives, and it is the ultimate test. Have you truly returned to yourself, or were you merely retreating temporarily, waiting for validation? CarlJung said, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life." When he returns, you're not just meeting a man again. You're facing the part of yourself that was once abandoned, anxious, waiting, believing that if only he loved you again, everything would be okay. And if you're not awake enough, that moment will pull you back to the old pattern. The girl who lived in lack, in a craving to be chosen, ready to fall away from herself to hold on to someone. When he returns, the first thing tested is not your pride, but your vibrational frequency. If you respond from an unhealed wound, you'll reply as if you've just been saved. If you've become yourself, you'll respond from fullness. Not guarded, not defensive, just a neutral yet profound presence, like a lake calmed after a storm, now reflecting everything with strange clarity. When a man returns, often he doesn't know why. Maybe a memory, a scent, a void. But if you respond from longing, from old wounds, you turn his return into a loop. If you respond from presence, you create the opportunity for a new quality of connection to be born. Imagine this. You are a mountain. He returns like a wanderer lost in flatlands. Don't rush to embrace him the moment his foot touches your base. Stand still. Let him look up. Let him see you're no longer the same. If he's still living in his ego, he'll want you to lower your height. But if he's touched the awakened part of himself, he'll understand. To stay, he must learn to climb. Psychologically, this is the moment of balancing emotional power. Before, you were below. You gave more, waited more, worried more. Now you've returned to your center. You're neither above nor below. You're simply here. And a man senses that in your energy field, calm, unhurried, but unmistakably no longer easy. Jung analyzed that humans are drawn not to closeness, but to something just far enough to spark curiosity, just deep enough to remain ungraspable. If you hold on to yourself, you become something never fully possessed, and that is where obsession begins. If you ask, what should I do when he returns? Do what you were already doing. Don't turn left from your path to look back. If you were writing, keep writing. If you were healing, go deeper. Meet him from the place where you've grown, not where you once broke. A woman who has returned to her true self doesn't open the door just because someone knocks. She opens it when there's a real reason to. And that makes a man not only want to step inside, but also want to be worthy of her presence. This is the final test to see if you've truly broken free from old patterns or merely draped them in the guise of mature femininity. If your heart is still waiting for him to return to feel whole, your entire journey will collapse the moment you say, "I've always been here." But if you look at his return without trembling inside, you've won, not in love, but in your awakening. If you've listened this far, leave a symbol, a word, a dot, anything to let me know you're present with me on this journey. Sometimes, a small gesture of presence is enough to say, "I've come this far." And if this video resonates, share it with someone who might need it. Not to help them, but so you can both speak the deeper things words often miss. Finally, if there's one thing to carry from all you've heard, it's this. A woman is not defined by who stays or leaves, but by how she stays with herself, even when every door outside closes. Jung once said, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." The deepest silence is not forged from pain, but born in the heart of darkness, where a woman learns to touch herself without running or clinging. True love is never created from control or fear. It is born from freedom. Freedom to be yourself, to be silent without needing to be heard, to be absent yet profoundly impactful. If you can pass through loneliness without crumbling, if you can love without losing your center, you don't just make others unable to leave, you touch the most sacred essence of femininity. Let your silence be the gentle echo someone hears in their mind long after you've gone. And if someone is deep enough, awake enough, mature enough, they'll return, not because you demanded it, but because you are the only place where they can find themselves.